to our discussions on the Brahms opus 122 chorale preludes. And we've returned once again this week to Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, to the town of Neustrelitz, where is what we've described before as the perfect Brahms organ, an instrument which was built in almost exactly the same year that Brahms was writing his chorale preludes, and which is one of the largest and most significant organs from the late Romantic period in northern Germany. It has 3 manuals and 45 stops. But today we're looking at the first of the 2 settings of Welt, dich, lassen. And I find this piece in its quiet way to be one of the loveliest of the opus 122. Brahms seems to be luxuriating into these chords. He almost seems to sink into them like sinking into a comfortable armchair. All this is an extension of that sort of sighing motif which permeates the piece right from the very beginning. You know, as I've been going through these preludes, I've thought it's tempting to think of them as being very similar in form and expression, in style, in the way in which they're put together. But I've begun to notice that each piece has its own distinct figuration that it's built around. We've said earlier that these chorale preludes have very little in common with Orgelbüchlein in terms of their purpose and other things. But this is actually one respect in which they are similar, and that is that in Orgelbüchlein, Bach uses a distinct form of figuration for each piece in an effort, in his case, to demonstrate to people, to students and so on, how all the different ways in which you can put together a chorale prelude. Brahms isn't doing it for that reason, but he is introducing this tremendous variation in his figuration. So this is the only one which has this kind of sighing feeling to it. The chorale melody is heavily decorated. It's in the top all the way through and is more or less continuous, although there's a couple of bars of figuration in bars 6 and 14 or something like that. Traditionally, the last line of this chorale is repeated, but Brahms doesn't put in a repeat line. The dynamic is given as forte ma dolce. I'm becoming increasingly convinced as we go through these works that the dynamics, that forte, for example, is a mark of solidity more than of volume. So I think it's calling for an 8-foot principal and a flute, and at the most a 4-foot flute as well. It certainly doesn't want mixtures and trumpets and loud things. There's a couple of reasons why this is the case. One is that, for example, in O wie selig, there is a crescendo to forte. A crescendo implies a swell box, and no organs of Brahms's day would have had a swell box which contained particularly loud stops. On this organ here, which, as I've said before, is one of the largest of Brahms's time, and certainly one of the most up-to-date. So it has a swell box, and it has a swell box which has quite a few stops in it. But even full swell, so to speak, is no louder than the 8-foot principal on the Hauptwerk. So the swell manual is a very quiet and restrained manual. So to mark something as forte on the swell indicates that he's not looking for a great deal of noise. Secondly, because Brahms is so restrained in his dynamic markings, he usually only marks F or P, very rare to go to other markings, then I tend to feel that he is making these indications in more a relative than concrete terms. So in other words, F as being louder than the P. So they're just louder and quieter indications. And as I say, F certainly doesn't want to be exuberantly loud in this or any other piece in opus 122. So I'm going to play it today on this organ on the 8-foot principal and an 8-foot flute on the Hauptwerk.